So this is part two of the Ramzi Yousef interview with the FBI, and this is the final of the series on the Bojinka plot. He advised that a variety of methods could be used to attack the aircraft, such as an improvised ground-to-ground missile, which he claimed to have been the knowledge and ability to construct, or an ordinary machine gun. Further noted that an improvised ground-to-ground missile could also be used to attack the president at a speaking location, which is what Ramzi Yousef wanted because Clinton was going to visit the Philippines. This is where the attack was going to take place. And basically, uh, you know, what was happening here was that he wanted to use an improvised device to kill the president, but he couldn't because the president's security was too tight. The second opinion, which Bessett considered, was a bombing attack of the president motorcade while the motorcade was en route between sites in Manila. So there was a second plot. He was going to dress as a priest and go to the front and have a bomb constructed in a bag and leave the bag there and walk away. And when the motorcade came around, it was going to explode it. Again, security would have found the bag right there, but he couldn't. He couldn't. You know, he couldn't get to it, so he didn't bother. The Sid indicated that he considered placing an improvised explosive device in a location along the motorcade designed to disable the lead car in the motorcade. He explained that by disabling the lead vehicle, the entire motorcade would be brought to a stop, enabling an explosive or poison gas attack on the presidential limousine. He related that he had considered using the chemical agent phosgene in the attack on the limousine. He noticed that he had the technical ability to readily manufacture that substance. According to Bassett, the phosgene in a liquid form could be placed into a metal container, which could then be opened with a charge of explosive, rapidly dispensing the substance as a gas. Bassett stated that he never considered an attack on Clinton using a handgun, maintained that he never actually saw Clinton in Manila. He did claim that he observed the presidential motorcade movement there, noting that it contained approximately 60 to 70 vehicles. Sid advised that the assassination attempt on Clinton was never carried out due to the observations of high security and his lack of time needed to plan and organize such an attempt. Sid was questioned regarding his activities in Manila subsequent to his survey regarding President Clinton in November of 1994, his visit, and was specifically asked whether Pope John Paul II was a target of an assassination by Bassett and his associates. And you'll find out that, yes, it was. He relayed that his associates had been interested in the Pope, but denied that the Pope was an assassination target. Bassett attributed religious articles and photographs of the Pope found in Bassett's apartment in Manila to the general interests of his associates. He spoke of an incident which occurred in his Manila apartment in early January of 1995, which had been reported in the media as a fire. He related that he had been demonstrating the purpose of the burning of a mixture of potassium chloride, sodium chlorate, and sugar to an associate when smoke produced by the burning agent began to fill the apartment. And the smoke was very thick, very dark. So people thought the apartment was on fire. That's why the fire department came. There's various other stories related to this. Another story which has no traction to it was that Bassett and Abdul Hakim, Bassett is actually Ramzi Yousef, Abdul Bassett Karim. That's his real name. Well, one of the names he uses. And that Abdul Hakim Murad weren't home and that the landlord and the intelligence services made a fire in the apartment and they came and they saw it and the fire department came and chased them. I don't know, that one doesn't sound right, but I think they were mixing chemicals and the fire department came. Bassett remarked that the neighbors to his apartment usually retired early. But on that evening, they had not done so and had noticed the smoke. These neighbors then alerted a security guard from the building who knocked on Bassett's apartment door and inquired as to the source of the fire. According to Bassett, the security guard did not accept Bassett's explanation that the smoke had been produced by fireworks. Bassett stated that the security guard then left the area after instructing Bassett and his friend to remain in the apartment. Once the security guard left, Bassett and his friend also departed. Sometime later, Bassett instructed his friend to return to the apartment to retrieve a laptop computer and documents left there. That would be, if I can understand there's a slight momentary lapse of reason here. where Basit and Hakim, Abdul Karim just basically forgot the laptop was there as they were escaping, saying that, oh, we think he's going to call the cops. And you would think that the first thing they would collect is the computer, but they rushed. I think they were nervous, and they left. And it's unbelievable that while the fire department was there and the police, that Basit Karim told Abdul Hakim Murad to go back to get the laptop, and that Abdul Karim went back. Abdul Hakim Murad went back. I mean, holy fuck! It's Abdul. One thing about Ramzi Yousef in the '93 bombing, that whole story just doesn't make sense. I'm talking about pre-bombing. You would think that as bombing the World Trade Center, that you would have plans to escape. You would have the money to escape. But that wasn't the case with Mohammed Saleh. Saleh went back to the Ryder truck, which was holding the bomb, and tried to get back the fucking security deposit that he laid out for the truck in his name so he can get that money and escape the country. If he escapes, nobody gets caught for this. Now, fast forward 2 years later, here we are in Manila. The biggest terrorist plot, even bigger than 9/11 itself, because you're talking about bombing 12 airliners and crashing 10 others, and the assassination of the Pope, right? And having one plane crash into CIA Langley. You would think that you would surround yourself with people that were smart. Instead, he told Abdul Hakim Murad to go back and get the laptop, and he did. Now, he called Saleh stupid. What would you call Abdul Hakim Murad? Well, according to the FBI, he told them that Abdul Hakim Murad was, a loyal partner. I don't know, man. Just whenever I hear the stories from Ramzi Yousef, I'm thinking of Benny Hill's music. Like, God, wow. And, I don't know, man. Let's go back. Basit noted, however, that when his friend returned to the apartment, a large number of police and security personnel were there, and they took his friend into custody. Another person where they could just point the finger at. Saleh did it. Abdul Hakim Murad did. Basit questioned whether the interviewing agents had seen this laptop computer and inquired as to whether they had been able to review several files, which is described as being coded or encrypted in some way. And of course they would be. You're talking about a major operation. He was then questioned as to certain materials found in Manila apartment, which appeared to refer to U.S. airline flights, particularly United Airlines flights. United Airlines, Flight 175 and 93, involved with the 9/11 attacks. Right? Basit was asked why United Airlines appeared to be the main target. He replied that United Airlines was the largest U.S. carrier in that area and so had most of the flights. You think Khalid Sheikh Mohammed knew about that too? Remember, he's the co-conspirator in this plot. Basit advised that the list of flight information contained on the computer was a list of possible bombing targets, but that not all flights listed would have been definite targets. He noted that if the incident in the middle of the apartment had not occurred, there would have been several airline bombings within 2 weeks of that time. Isn't that fucking unbelievable? 2 weeks away from a terrorist plot that would have dwarfed 9/11. And nobody knows about this. Nobody talks about it. This is where the 9/11 attacks came from. Basit was asked whether he knew of the plans for future airline bombings or that plans or other targets of terrorist attacks. He replied that he did not know of any specific plans for any such attacks, but did add that there were many committed people in the world with sufficient knowledge to carry out attacks at U.S. targets inside the United States. This is 6 years prior to 9/11. These operators were already here. They're patient. He related that while in Manila, a total of 4 people, including himself, were involved in the U.S. airline bombing plot, that he had personally trained the others and knew them to be still capable of carrying out such a plot. He would not further describe or identify the other individuals involved in the bombing scheme. Basit asked the interviewing agents whether the agents knew that how the person who had been arrested in the Philippines and who had subsequently escaped and effected that escape. When the agents replied that they did not have details of that escape, Basit described the individual who escaped as being strong, intelligent, and resourceful. It further stated that he doubted this individual would have to bribe anyone to effect his escape. In discussing the individual who had escaped from Philippine custody, Basit acknowledged that this individual was Wali Shah Amin Khan. Now, Ramzi Yousef's brother was also detained in the Philippines. Following Basit's description of Wali as strong and intelligent, Basit was questioned as to whether Basit had been acting under the direction of Wali Shah. Basit would not further elaborate on that issue. He knew Muhammad Jamal Khalifa, the brother-in-law of bin Laden, Wali Khan, and that he was a financier of Jonaskoya, a Jonaskoya company. I think that's what it was called. And Muhammad Jamal Khalifa had a stake in that. Let's go back. I lost the page. So when questioned regarding a business card on the name of Muhammad Jamal Khalifa, found in Basit's apartment in the Philippines, Basit stated he did not personally know Khalifa, but that Khalifa's business card had been given to him by Wali Khan Amin Shah. Like I said, Wali Khan Amin Shah was employee in one of his companies. Basit also acknowledged that he was familiar with the name Osama bin Laden and that he knew to be a relative of Khalifa, but would not further elaborate. They never met each other. When Basit was questioned regarding the types of devices and explosives would have been used in the plot to bomb U.S. airlines, he refused to describe them in detail because others might wish to use such techniques, and he did not want the government to have the ability to defeat them. Smart. However, when questioned regarding the contents of some clear plastic bottles, which had been recovered during the search of his Manila apartment, Basit advised that those bottles contained nitrobenzene, which, when mixed with potassium chlorate or sodium chlorate, would make nitrobenzene chlorate mixture an explosive. He noted, however, that a nitrobenzene chlorate mixture would not have been used in the bombing of an airliner, as it was detectable through airport security screening. He related that the explosive which he would have been used could not be detected by even the most sophisticated screening devices, which he claimed were currently being utilized in London's Heathrow Airport and in Bonn, Germany. Basit maintained that he acquired his knowledge of airport explosive screening, including the new sophisticated devices, by watching a CNN televised special report which outlined such information. In other words, the news said, here you go. This is how we're going to detect bombs. In other words, hey, terrorists, if you're watching this, don't use the same devices. Don't use the same chemicals in the devices because we can detect them. And people think the left is smarter than the right. Basit did discuss a method which he devised using a Casio electronic wristwatch as a timing device used to initiate an explosive. He relayed that when the back of the watch was removed, there was a small bacon-shaped space in the interior where an electric part could be installed and converted to the watch's alarm. He noted that this created a timer which could be used to connect to a small light bulb whose glass had been broken. 9-volt battery would be used as a power source for the circuit so that when the alarm functioned, the circuit would close, causing the bulb's filament to get very hot. The hot filament would be used to ignite some nitroglycerin cotton, which would in turn be used to ignite an explosive charge. Basit acknowledged responsibility for the bombing of Philippine Airlines plane by stating that the explosive device in that case did more than it was intended to do. He refused to provide any further details regarding this event, but stated that he would talk about it in a later time. Now, by the way, you notice how he's quite open about his plans. No torture. Didn't need to. Why did the CIA torture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin Hashib? You know, it came out later that the CIA was going to torture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed even if he came out talking about operations, including 9/11. And when the idea of 9/11 came up and that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was talking about it, they tortured him more. Now, it makes you wonder why they do this. According to the SEER programmer, the co-author of SEER program, which was used to torture these people, James Mitchell, he testified under the Guantanamo hearing that they did it because they didn't care about 9/11. They wanted future plots. But they were there because of 9/11. And when 9/11 came up from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, they tortured him more. Does that make any sense to you? During the interview, Basit inquired several times as to whether he faced a death sentence in the United States. He indicated that he expected to be ultimately executed and that his only concern was that he have sufficient time to write a book about his activities. Basit indicated that since the World Trade Center bombing, he had read numerous chemical encyclopedias and had become much more proficient in the construction of use of explosives. He also remarked that subsequent to the World Trade Center bombing, he had instructed others in training camps in Pakistan near the Afghan border. That's how he met Abdul Hakim Murad and Ahmed Ajaj. This instruction was in the use of explosives. Through a 10-day basic and 20-day expert course, he noted that the only cost to the students was the expense for materials used. Discussing his expertise and proficiency regarding explosives, Basit spoke of a device which he had designed and constructed, described by him as a type of gun made from a pen capable of explosively firing a projectile. With question regarding apparent injuries to his hands, Basit related that he had received the injuries as a result of an accidental explosion in Karachi, Pakistan, which he was going to use in the bombing of Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. But the bomb had exploded prematurely and he had to go to the hospital, which gave him the injury to his eye. He advised that he had been attempting to remove particles of impurities from the lead oxide with his fingers when leaning over a quantity of that material. He noted that he had apparently exerted too much pressure on his lead oxide, causing it to explode, injuring not only his hands but his eyes. Remarked that as he's being transported to the hospital, by formulating an account that he had been injured with a butane lighter which had exploded. In other words, a lighter. Yeah. Basit acknowledged that his parents resided in the Baluchistan region of Iran, well aware of his involvement in the World Trade Center bombing. He related at one point following the bombing, a female who claimed to represent a U.S. telephone company telephoned his parents' residence and attempted to solicit information pertaining to the whereabouts of Ramzi Yousef, claiming that Yousef owed the company a significant amount of money. He noted that this woman, after being rebuffed by Basit's father, went on to inquire as to the whereabouts of numerous individuals which Basit knew to be aliases he had utilized in the past. Basit was questioned as to his knowledge of an individual named Noreldian, which torn up vehicle registration had been recovered at 40 Parampo Avenue in New Jersey, where he was renting an apartment. Basit stated that he neither knew such an individual nor how the registration came to be located there. Now, there's conflicting testimonies about whether the apartment or, somewhere in the apartment that it was used by intelligence services. I wouldn't surprise me because that's what happened with Mohammed Saleh. And the agent living in that apartment was Josie Hadass, a Mossad operative. And the truck was going to be used, according to Saleh, to move Josie Hadass, move some stuff or whatever. Instead, he moved the bomb. Was it meant to use the bomb? Yeah. But was that the only reason? Was that the primary reason? I don't know. But when the police was asked about Israeli intelligence involved in the case, they said, well, we're not going to certainly tell you. Meaning that they knew. Now, is that the case with 9/11? I don't know. I submit to say that the CIA probably knew that Israeli intelligence was inside the United States monitoring people from Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda. And that the CIA said, all right, you run your operation, but tell us any information about terrorist attacks. And they didn't. That makes more sense to me. Basit claimed that he was responsible for a bombing which cost tens of lives and hundreds of injuries. He noted that the bombing had been widely recovered on CNN television news network, but could not discuss any details, as he stated that it could implicate friends or relatives of his who was involved. Now, there's a lot to unpack, but this series is meant to show you just how similar it is to the 9/11 attacks, how the intelligence services, foreign and domestic, have been shadowing these people, and that they may have missed some signals, which led to the bombing, the successful bombing, even though the bombing itself was not successful because it couldn't topple over the tower into the South Tower. The whole idea was to basically get the North Tower to be bombed, have it fall into the South Tower, into Lower Manhattan, killing 50,000 people. That's what Ramzi Yousef surmised. Now, that would have been a terrible incident, but the bomb wasn't big enough. Now, instead of bombing the World Trade Center, they'll attack from high. Now, who's to say that they got wind of the plot, manipulated the plot to have bombs inside the World Trade Center? Who knows? I'm not an expert in engineering. That's why you don't hear me talk about the World Trade Center, whether it was bombed or not. I'm not an expert in that field. So my opinions really mean nothing. I read prima facie documents to you. That's it. Material that are factual material. And then I fill in the blanks that the government or the intelligence services won't do. And I try to do that to the best of my ability. And that's why you'll see me reading from these files and documents, because I want you to be educated on these incidents that are related to the 9/11 attacks or by the attacks themselves, because you deserve to be informed of what's going on. And information is power. Power belongs in the hands of the people. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Take care.